It's never too early to invest in building your wealth. Caught in this bit of a rat race where you're working so hard to build wealth, but then you're unable to create the space to actually think about your wealth building strategy.
Tara, welcome to the Femme and Fortune podcast.
Thank you, Aisha. It's a pleasure to be here. Felt like I had taken a slight pay cut and I knew I was taking on a lot of risks. And it got to a point where I started to do the analysis of the amount of investment I'm making in terms of my talent and my time and my efforts and the return that I was going to see. But also your narrative, your story is probably the most important lever to securing that.
Many of my guests on the podcast so far have been entrepreneurs. So they've built their own companies, which led them to wealth. But that's not the only way to do it. So what does it take to build serious wealth when you don't own the company, when you're an employee instead of an owner? Now, most people will never start a business, right? They will build their financial lives as employees. But almost nobody talks about how to do that strategically. My guest today, Tara Lajimoke, did it better than most, rising to one of the most senior executive roles in British business from humble beginnings on a London council estate. Tara earned a first-class degree from the London School of Economics, a Fulbright scholarship, an MBA from Harvard, and built a career spanning Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, the Financial Times, and Bupa. Today, we're going to talk about the money conversations that most women at her level never have in public. So how do you get to those senior positions? What's the blueprint? How can you actually earn? And how do you turn a salary into wealth? This episode is for everyone who's an employee, especially women, those of you who are working hard for your employer in their business, but wanting to build wealth of your own. If you're not already subscribed to the Femme and Fortune channel, hit the subscribe button now so you never miss an episode. And if you want more money investing or wealth building tips from me, sign up to my free weekly wealth newsletter and join thousands of people who read it every week. Link is in the description. Tara, welcome to the Femme and Fortune podcast.
Thank you, Aisha. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to have you. I am super excited to jump into your story, actually, because there are bits that I didn't even know. You know, when I was prepping a bit for this conversation, I was coming across some stuff. I was like, oh my gosh. So let's jump straight in, right? So you moved to the UK when you were a child. You grew up on a council estate. Then you went on to get a first-class degree from the London School of Economics. You were a Fulbright scholar. You got an MBA from Harvard. And you have a career that spans Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, Financial Times, and Bupa. I mean, is it even possible for you to be more successful?
It absolutely is. I can certainly say it is, but thank you.
Take me back to your childhood and what it was like, you know, growing up on a council estate. And you said you came from Nigeria. So, like, what happened? Why did you come?
My parents separated.
Okay.
My
but were
mom,
you born in Nigeria?
Yes, I was born in Nigeria. My parents separated and my mom left everything to rebuild her life in a new country, which took a lot of courage. I mean, we're talking living a life of financial security. She had a whole staff of help, cleaners, housekeepers, chefs in Nigeria. Exactly. Yeah. My father was relatively well off, a senior, successful military official, and actually had a very inspiring story. He was one of the first in his local community to complete a postgraduate degree as a military officer abroad in Russia, of all places, in the 70s. But my mum left all of that to start anew. And I have to admit, there are parts of me, the very childish, ungrateful parts of me who, when I moved here and I saw how she was living, I thought to myself, why would you give all of that up for this? And I was ashamed. I was ashamed because, you know, most of my friends, most of her friends who lived or had houses in the UK, lived in places like Mayfair, right? And I knew a few of my friends from back home were like, oh, we should hang out. I was ashamed to say we lived in Peckham on a council estate. But actually, I grew quickly to realize that what she did was not only incredibly brave, taught me so much about discipline and about having the courage to invest in yourself and in your future. Because what she did was she also wanted to be able to contribute and to build her independence, I think, for all
like
of her
separately
life.
to your father.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it meant having to take on lots of jobs. But actually, it showed me the power of rebuilding and investing in something which can outlive the volatility of a relationship, the fragility of marriage. And that I think was part of the template that allowed me to aim higher and go further.
Because I was going to say, like, you know, did you dream about, you know, having a successful life when you were a child? Like, was there anything that was kind of planting seeds in your head?
Absolutely, I did. And I did because the likes of my father dared me to dream big.
Okay.
I grew up in a very patriarchal society where women were often subjugated to lower levels, whether it was expectations or opportunities. I was one of 5 girls. And my father, which I would say then probably wasn't the norm, would always push us to strive for more. And his life was an example of that as well, you know, coming from very modest background to rising through the ranks in the military and doing incredibly well. And he would often say to us, you know, you could be whatever you want. Don't settle for anything less than excellence. So that was great. And actually, I realized the value of that when I moved to the UK and I went to, I think I got into 6th form. This was in Lambeth College in Clapham, before Clapham was cool. Only I bought property there, my goodness. And I remember, you know, my mom saying, oh, I'd go through Peckham and Cold Harbour Lane in Brixton, you know, be careful, the drugs, the stray bullets. She could be a bit melodramatic, my mom. But the point was, you're going through quite unsafe neighborhoods. Focus, do your best. And I thought, okay, this is the price I have to pay to get the future that I want. And I knew education was my ticket to the life that I dreamt of. I was absolutely relentlessly focused on working hard, giving myself the sort of opportunities that people like my mom didn't really have a lot of. And I remember actually having a conversation with a classmate of mine in 6th form, because, you know, we started to think about A-levels and my instinct was, right, what are the universities I'm going to apply to? I looked at the league table. I think we had Oxford, LSE, Cambridge, one of the few times LSE was above Oxford or Cambridge. And my instinct was, okay, we're applying to the top 3. And my classmate said, not with your accents and your skin color. And I was like, okay. She was very tongue-in-cheek, but she was like, no, she was also Black, similar background, council estate. And I guess her point was, how many people do you think who look like us and sound like us end up at Oxford?
I guess that's more of an indication about how she saw herself.
Exactly.
Rather
And
than you.
that was my point.
And she said accent. Your accent is like the Queen's English. I mean, did it change or what on earth is she talking about?
It's not the Queen's English, you know, it's not, we might have, you know, hitting some of the innits that I may have said then, but it's not your posh upper class. And I think her point was there aren't that many people like us in those environments. And I think it was fair because she hadn't seen that many examples. I had obviously heard stories from my father. I'd seen photos. I'd talked to him about some of the places he went to, not in the UK. But I guess it was easier for me to dream because I
you'd
had seen.
it.
Yeah,
You can't reach for what you can't see.
exactly. But also you can't get to those positions that are structurally out of the boundaries that have been set often by others in positions of power without help. And that's one thing I think is really important because it's very romantic for me to say, oh, I could dream it because I'd seen it and I worked hard, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is there are lots of people who dream and who work even harder than I do, who sadly don't have the opportunities or, quite frankly, haven't got the luck as well in some cases, right, to get to those places.
Is that what you would put it down to? Because my thinking is very similar to yours. I think you have to work hard. You have to reach for the stars. You know, I'm the sort of person that if I look at something and I don't see many people like me, I'm like, so what? I can be the first. Or I can be the second.
Exactly.
And I almost see it as a challenge. I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to show them it can be done.
Exactly.
Whereas I think your friend has a completely different mindset. So I think mindset is important too.
Completely
agree. Do you
agree.
think it is also about luck and having opportunity? And if so, what do you mean by opportunity? Like for anyone listening, how do they make sure that they have opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all of those things. Absolutely. I think you have to meet a high threshold, you know, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in other settings. And I think to do that, you have to work incredibly hard. And it's unfair. It often means that you have to work harder than other groups. But actually, I think that cultivates something even more valuable, right? That persistence, that drive. But then, yes, I do think that, you know, I like to call it divine intervention. I do think I was blessed with the right pieces of that puzzle, i.e., for every chapter in my journey, I've had the opportunity to be mentored by people who've opened doors for me, who've giving me critical advice to help me navigate. So going back to that college example, actually, I heard that comment, and actually she went as far as saying, well, for me, I'm not sure I'm going to go to university. My cousin had a baby, age 16. She got a really nice council flat. Actually, I think in Clapham, so she's probably not doing too badly.
She owns that council flat.
I know,
now.
she's still managed to buy that council flat. Joke's on me. But anyway, I was like, what? Like, have a child at 16? And like, that's not my life. No. So anyway, thankfully, I was able to fall back to the stories my father would tell, the values that he instilled in me. But then I looked for people who could help me get there. So that would be my advice. I would say you often can't do it on your own. And those people who are like self-made this, self-made that, no one does it on their own. I would be lying if I said it was all me. But actually, I was able to find people who could help me get there, who could help me unlock the door, who could help me understand how to get into the room and navigate and work. And it was my A-levels tutor, actually. I said, I want to go to one of these 3 universities. How do I do it? And that persistence and that desire to be mentored and in return to work as hard as necessary to get there, I think he was really inspired by. So he invested time literally looking at my personal statement and talking about colleges, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say create your own luck and find people who can help you.
No, absolutely. And I think on the luck point, I think everyone has luck. I just think that the reason some people are able to utilize their luck in a way where we can see it is because they're more prepared for it.
Yeah.
So you have to be out there. You've got to be, you know, going to as many opportunities as you can so that when your luck shows up, it's in a way that you can actually benefit from it. Because I know there are so many people out there like, oh, she's successful because she's lucky and she's got this because she's lucky. And I say to them, you're lucky too, but you might not see your moments of luck because you're at home moaning or you haven't done certain things to enable it to actually benefit you.
Absolutely. And that preparation point is so important as well. I mean, prior to me having that conversation with my A-levels tutor, I said, I he noticed something in me. So I was always showing up for every lesson, for every session. I was on time. I was working hard. I had built in his mind a picture of someone who was investable. And he was willing to, when I then made the formal request, invest in me. And I think, you can extrapolate that to the workplace, etc. But I think that work ethic and that brand building is so crucial, so that when you do have those moments that present themselves, it's seamless.
And I think just looking at your journey, I think what you said earlier about recognizing that education is a way to kind of elevate you, through different sort of social classes or bands or however you want to describe it. And in order to do that, you do need to work on building your brand. And that in turn, I think, can help you to attract the various mentors and other people that you will need to be able to succeed. Because as we said, nobody does it by themselves. But for those people who might not have ready-made networks or know people, how do you go out and find these people and convince them to help you?
I didn't have a ready-made network. In Nigeria, probably, but, I was starting from scratch. My mom wasn't as well connected, etc. And I actually remember you went to Goldman as well. I remember walking in for the first time in my interviews and I just thought, my goodness, this is such an unfamiliar world. And the way people spoke and carried themselves, I just felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb, and someone somewhere would soon realize that I was an imposter who absolutely didn't deserve to be there. But how do you build your network? I think it's interesting, actually, because it's so easy to want to try and fit in. And the corollary to that is then trying to be someone that you're not. And I have to admit, I definitely did a part of that. I didn't tell anyone that I lived in Peckham, that, I was just always trying to hide these parts of me that I felt were less Goldman's or less McKinsey or whatever it was.
So you didn't feel you could be your true self?
No.
Is that because you felt they would judge you? Is it them or is it you? Is it that you felt they would judge you, or is it more that you just felt embarrassed about it? Or both? I
think a bit of both. Okay. I mean, definitely the former, because I wanted to keep this job that I felt was my ticket to, help me, my mom, my family. So I really tried to reflect what I saw, because I thought that was the sort of poster child for success, right? I really focused on trying to fit into the mold of what I thought a successful investment banker or consultant. And honestly, if I'm being completely honest, it wasn't until my latter years at McKinsey that I think I was comfortable enough to actually expose people to as much of me as possible. Because I really started to see that like my superpower. So once you shift that mindset from, oh my gosh, the hardship and the this, and not to take that away from anyone, of course it's hard, etc. But actually I realized that even that in itself was such a pivotal part of shaping me to who I was, not just as a person, but also as a professional. So my empathy, my emotional intelligence, great qualities that any leader should have, I was able to cultivate that through those experiences that I had. My first job was as a bartender. I remember my mom telling me, well, you're going to need to get a job and contribute, because I'm doing 4.
My mom said the same thing. My first job was at Peter Jones or John Lewis.
Oh, I did that as well. I was in the bridal registry. That was such an upgrade for me.
I was kitchenware.
I was bridal selling. And that was one of the best jobs, because I was actually in an office at a desk with a phone. I felt like I'd made it. I haven't worked 2-3 summers and quite a few nights actually during term time at a bar.
But you learn things, as you said.
You learn so much about, working with drunken customers in East London in a comedy bar. You learn so much about yourself and tolerance and patience. But anyway, But going back to your original question, so how do you build that network? So I think the first thing actually is being authentic and being true to yourself. And actually, I think people do gravitate towards it, sometimes in a funny way.
Yeah, but when you say be authentic and true to yourself, right, at the same time, you said you couldn't bring your whole self to work. So how do you do both? How do you be authentic, but at the same time, you might not be able to bring your whole self to work because you want to try and fit in?
It's tricky. I think that the part of me that really resonated with people who went over and above to support me professionally was actually the part that showed the real raw side to Tara. So the fact that I went to a not so great school in southwest London, the fact that I overcame a lot to get to where I was, even losing my father and what I had to do to continue through university and get through my exams. Like those stories, actually, I started to realize that when I shared with people, people saw something special in me. And people often want to work with special people and support people who have big aspirations and also are willing to put in what's necessary to get there.
And also, I think when you know where somebody comes from and it's a background like yours, I think then it makes your success even more amazing. Because as I was saying to you earlier, like I've known you for a while, but I didn't know the background of your childhood. And when I was like doing some research for this conversation, I found out, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I thought you were phenomenal anyway. And then I was like, to get where she did from there, I was honestly just like, wow. And I think that maybe sometimes you do have to share parts of yourself about where you come from. And it can make what you've done even more impressive to other people.
And hopefully helps other people as well. I have to say, I was really conflicted when you asked me to do this because I thought, I don't have a fortune.
Well, everything is relative.
It's relative. I definitely.
I mean, you have a pretty good life.
Yes, definitely relative to when I started out, absolutely. And then secondly, I thought, gosh, I mean, there's so many more successful and amazing people. But you're right, actually.
Do this to ourselves.
This was my point. I said to myself, Tara, would you have wanted to have heard stories like yours when 20, 30 years ago? And the answer was a resounding yes. So I completely agree. So I think sharing that side to yourself and sharing it for the right reason as well, right? So people get to know you, people get to know what you are capable of. And that point you made around what you've had to overcome, it's something that struck me so deeply when I started interviewing at McKinsey. So as part of the recruitment network, etc. And, you're giving a sort of templates for what to look for, qualities, experiences, and so on. And, it's quite systematic, right? People who can demonstrate leadership skills, people who can demonstrate blah, blah, blah. And actually what I started to realize was what was a better indicator of success was those individuals who may have not gotten as far as others, but have had to overcome so much more. So their starting point was 10, 20x versus the person who had done maybe 1x more. And that for me, if we were to look at it analytically, it was just so much more powerful in the sense that, my goodness, they had to go through this, go through that, single parent home, not a lot of resources, somehow managed to get here, maybe not a top 5 university, but imagine if they had half of what this other individual had, right? So, and I saw it, right? Because, I was there for 8 years or so, and I could literally see that hypothesis play out. Because, when we have these debates, we're like, oh, but they haven't got, Cambridge, and nothing against people who go to Cambridge, right? And 10 A stars. It was like, yeah, but what have they had to overcome? We need to
be there.
Compare apples with apples. And actually, I would see them thrive because you just give them the opportunity and they've got the essence of what one needs to be able to get to that level. So I think that's really, really important. I think sharing more actually gives people who may see the sort of standard grades, university, et cetera, but actually the richness and nuance of your journey is just so much more powerful and illuminating.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of people need to hear that, because sometimes you do sort of think, oh, I don't fit the mold. I don't come from here. I don't have this. I don't have that. It doesn't matter. And I think as time goes on, it matters less and less. Now,
and sorry, just because I feel like I didn't fully answer the question for your listeners, what I would say is building a network, obviously find out why you want to build relationships or be mentored or get sponsored by certain individuals, but also your narrative, your story is probably the most important lever to securing that. And when I shifted from mechanical, hey, VP, help me get promoted, to, hey, this is my vision. This is my dream. This is what I want to get to. This is what I've had to overcome to get to where I am. And this is how I'd love to get your help in getting me to that next level.
then people can get behind that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People buy into stories and less into scripts.
I love that, because so many people think, oh, okay, I'm going to go networking. I'm going to go to this event. I'm going to be like, hey, hi, I'm this person. I work here. Can you help me with X? But actually, as you said, they need to get to know you. They need to know your story so they can get behind you, your visions, your dreams, and help you to get there.
Exactly.
Now, a lot of the guests that I've had on Femme and Fortune have been entrepreneurs, and many of them have built their wealth that way. And it's actually something that I've been thinking about a lot, because I didn't want to like put out the story out there that the only way you can build wealth is by having your own business. So, you know, when I was thinking of guests to have to come on and your name came to mind, I was like, actually, yes, because you built your wealth up to this point by being an employee. So you worked at other companies. As I've said before, you were at Goldman, you were at EFT, you were at McKinsey, you were at Bupa. You were exceptional at those companies, though. Is that what it was that you think helped you to be able to go to these companies and to do well and to grow? Because a lot of people won't start their own companies, so they will have to build wealth by being an employee. So basically, I want to understand the blueprint. You know, how do you build wealth, like financial security, when you don't own the company and you're an employee?
I can see why you have so many examples of entrepreneurs. I do think, you know, ownership is key. And I think failing that, I think you need to be at a level where you are close to ownership or a concentration of power.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
So I would say that the critical moments for me in terms of financial security was moving from McKinsey to the FT. And that was a role where I was brought on to essentially build a business that was
Inside
backed by
the
the
Financial
FT.
Times.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And I actually shifted my mindsets from, okay, do I negotiate this like a classic employee package? Or do I actually really try and get a bit more skin in the game like an entrepreneur would? So actually, I do think that entrepreneurial mindset is key, even as an employee. I think it's key in terms of the sort of process of compensation, negotiations, and so on. But also, I think the precursor to getting there as well, the way you perform, the way you carry yourself, I think really thinking about it like an owner is a big piece of it. But
so, sorry, you said that in the beginning, when you got the offer, you negotiated the contract. And then once what you had built within the company was successful and you had data, you then went back to them. Were you trying to negotiate for more?
yes.
Yeah. I like it.
Absolutely. Because I felt like I had taken a slight pay cut and I knew I was taking on a lot of risk.
Okay.
I didn't think the first couple of months was the right time because, you know, you haven't really proven yourself. Then you had the backdrop of that black swan event, aka the pandemic. But then after our first year, you know, we saw the results. We had delivered a lot of value at a really critical time as well for the organization. So I thought that was a fair time to renegotiate.
Did it work?
It did.
Amazing.
It did. And there were some things that I did well. There were some things I didn't do as well. So I say this from a position of, hindsight. But I think what often works, having done this several times, but also having managed people who are doing this to me.
It's funny, like there are times when you're doing it to someone else and then other people will sit opposite you and you're like, yeah, I've been you.
Yes. And again, I notice a pattern. I often notice that certain groups, typically men, approach it in a particular way. You know, for example, it's often on potential. It's like, this is what I'm going to do next year, da, da, da. And of course, a bit of this is what I've done. And women were often judged on proven performance versus potential, right?
Interesting.
I think that, again, they asked more often, and this is maybe a relatively rough, not statistically significant sample size, but I still think, you know, when I speak to other colleagues, it's fairly consistent, right? You know, I had...
So sorry, men are judged on their potential, but women are judged based on what they have delivered.
I'm surprised you haven't heard that phrase before, potential versus proven performance. And I think there are a number of reasons why that is, right? You can dig into the behavioral psychology of it all, you know, the fact that maybe men sell themselves in a particular way and women, you know, are often just sort of head down doing a great job. And again, a lot of this is generalizing, right? Not everyone fits into these constructs. But what I would say, though, is that I think you absolutely, ideally, you want to be in control of numbers. So you want to have P&L responsibility.
Yep.
So I was in a really powerful position because I could see a clear line between my leadership performance and the bottom line.
For the company.
Yeah. And it's very hard to argue with.
I have made the company X,
this amount of money. Yeah. And it's, again, another pattern that I saw. Women are often hired into roles that require a lot of talent and are strategically important for the company, whether it's HR, whether it's, you know, legal, marketing, but then do they have P&L responsibility? So if you can, and it's something you're passionate about, absolutely being in control of numbers.
Yep.
And that's not the only way, right? But it's
but
one
also,
of the
as
common
you said,
ways.
It makes it very clear. It's a bit like when I was at Goldman, I was in wealth management. It is very clear how much money I make for the company.
Yeah.
And therefore, when I look at what I'm paid, you kind of look at the difference between the two. And it's like, well, last year I did this. This year I have done this. So my salary also needs to move.
Exactly the same logic I used. I said, this is what the company was making, which was basically nothing because
it was new.
But obviously this is how much seed capital I got. This is how much profit I delivered. And this is what it's like relative to other parts of the organization.
Yep.
Because that's the other thing as well. You know, I think you have to understand the boundaries in which you are operating in and trying to negotiate within. And there are a number of strategies one can deploy. So there's a sort of absolute approach of, I delivered this, increased bottom line by 140%. Therefore, I think compensation should increase by at least 100%, right? So those sorts of, and it could be also relative as well. And it could be relative to the market. It could be relative to your peers. That's obviously often very hard to come by. But I think you can have those conversations, right? Even if it's at a range level.
But when you say we can have those conversations, I think so many people, even though they might know now that they should have those conversations, just lack the courage. Like in some cultures, it's just not the done thing. You don't, you know, march into your boss's office and be like, I want a pay rise. I actually did do that once. So I'm done with this. I'm going to tell him what I think they should be paying me. But as you said, I went in with the data. This is why you should increase my salary. But for those people who might not have that confidence, what can they do? Like how can you learn the confidence? Does it grow?
Yeah, I think you can. I think practice makes perfect or less uncomfortable. The first time I did it, I felt so awkward. I was just like, out of body experience. Tara, what are you doing? Look at his facial expression. This is just a nightmare. You're probably going to get fired. But actually,
so I got to hold your nerve, right?
Exactly. I got coaching. I spoke to a coach.
Coaching or?
No, just literally a coach that I was working with, an executive coach.
Okay,
but even before that, because not everyone has an executive coach, speak to a mentor, speak to someone. If you have friends in HR, even better. Because that's the other thing as well, actually. I think you also have to recognize that it is a multifaceted tapestry of consideration. So, like I said, there's a sort of what are you contributing perspective. There is the, during the time of BLM 2021, people that looked like us, which was maybe once in a generational phenomenon, we were in a bit more demand than usual, right? So there is that dimension as well. But all to say that the other thing that I think people often miss, which as a P&L holder, I started to have a finer appreciation for, was there are certain pieces to your package that have a bit more wiggle room than others. Okay. So salaries are often fixed within a band, right? And then going above that band. Component. Exactly. So say base salary is £250,000. There's
and this is for like a senior role.
Exactly. This is for like C-level. There's often new X level tenure, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these considerations can get 250, super experienced, blah, 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 blah. Maximum within that band is 450,000.
Okay, so the salary band is say 250,000 to 400,000.
Exactly.
And where your salary in that band depends on, your experience, how much you worked elsewhere. Okay.
Exactly.
But you can negotiate within that band.
Exactly. But even that has a ceiling, right? Is the point. So I know for some people the band will be, or many jobs actually, the band will be much tighter.
Yeah.
And people are often like, okay, I want to get above, say, £100,000. So like, I'm going to keep pushing salary. But if HR literally cannot move past the band, you're fighting a losing battle. So look at other pieces as well. So example, sign-on bonus for me was incredible. I was able to, and I won't say where, secure a sign-on bonus that was as much as my salary for the year.
Amazing.
On at least 2 occasions. And again, there's a strategy to that, right? It could be, foregoing bonus from the previous role, equity that you've built, even if it's not actual financial equity, but in terms of the time, et cetera, that you've put in and you're expecting to get promoted next year. But so there's that opportunity cost of moving, which could justify a sign-on bonus.
Yep.
LTIPs are another.
What's an LTIP?
It's a long-term incentive plan or program.
Okay.
But again, usually for more senior roles. But, I had it.
How do they work?
So essentially you have a package that says if you are with the company for X number of years, this is how much you get.
As in like each base salary increases, or is it an additional amount of money you get?
Amount of money, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And there are different flavors and some are super complex and some have equity component and so on. But the core is essentially we are rewarding you for staying with the company over the long term.
And then there's the equity component that you've mentioned a couple times as well. And you also said that ownership is key. And I think one of the interesting things about when you are an employee, if you do work for a company where you can get equity, so by equity, we mean like own a bit of ownership of that company, it can be so valuable because it also aligns your interest with the interest of the company. Because if you do well and the company does well, well, you get paid more because now you own a bit of the company.
Exactly.
So I think it's really important for people to look at all those pieces you mentioned. So you mentioned the sign-on bonus, the salary, potentially getting more depending on tenure and performance, plus the equity as well.
Yes. LTIP, performance bonuses. So again, often salaries, I think, are often the most constrained because they're benchmarked heavily. There's a lot of scrutiny, risk audit committees, blah, blah, blah. So you want to get someone, ideally, the one who actually makes the decision. So it may not even be your boss. And you need to be careful around the sort of choreography of that. But them and HR, you want to make the decision around giving you more easier. So ideally you understand the composition of that package and what's possible. And in some cases, actually, it may even be a first, and that's fine. At least in one of my situations, they had never been giving anyone a sign-on bonus, but I essentially pushed for one.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think to your point around how do you build the confidence, it's not always going in with a number or I want this. It's what would it take for me to get this? Could be another way to phrase it, right? And sometimes it's like, okay, well, you need more experience or you need to demonstrate X, Y, Z. It's like, okay, next 3 months, help me find a project that allows me to demonstrate this because I know I'm capable of it. I know I've done this. Or it's even say, actually, I have done it. Thank you for mentioning that. If this is what it takes, I will give you a pack. Because again, it's empowering those people to have those conversations and fight the battle for you. And I had to do it on at least 2 occasions where I literally sent an email or, in another example, a set of slides with the basis for why I deserve to be paid X. And it gave the evidence, the client feedback, et cetera, markets, benchmarks. And it's, I think, not always about being the sort of person who's able to have that confidence one-to-one conversation, but sometimes it's about strategically thinking about how you get there and enlisting people who are able to help you.
As you said, it's all about finding people at various points in your journey who can help you.
Yeah.
So outside of your salary, what have you been doing to build wealth alongside, what you've been getting as an employee? Like, do you have any investments? How do you think holistically about your wealth?
Don't think I actually do as well as I should, which is why I need to speak to you. And I'm looking forward to our chat.
Our financial coaching.
Yes, our financial coaching. I have a portfolio, which I built with Claude, that basically has all of my cash savings and all of my investments. But the short answer is yes, I try to create a balanced portfolio. So taking some of the lessons from GS where I have, and there are many of these, right? Like Warren Buffett has one and others like you should have like 40% in real estate and this and that. I try and optimize to that, but honestly, I don't. Most is in cash, savings, bonds, etc. But I do have a few investments in startups, in property, and a few other random things. But I think my aspiration is to actually do a much better job where the money that I've worked hard to accumulate, I'm growing at a decent rate. And I think I've done the accumulation piece, and I definitely want to accumulate more because, like I said, I don't see myself as super wealthy. But I actually think the mistake many people make, and it's a mindset thing as well, where you think, oh my gosh, I've got this number in my account. Actually, you should be making that work for you. And I don't think I'm doing that as well, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I had lunch with someone yesterday. Actually, she was a previous guest in last season. And after her divorce, she was saying that she had to sell some assets to sort out the divorce and everything. And she just had a whole bunch of cash. And for the next couple of years, she did nothing other than sit in cash, and other people sort of showed her investments and she didn't do anything. And now she's regretting it. And I said to her, it's so common that it happens. It's either like you work so hard and you build up this, these assets, this money, that if you're not very comfortable with investing, part of you does feel like, ugh, I don't want anything to happen to it. I don't want anything to happen to it.
Yeah.
But it's so important that we invest. Yeah. So what would you say it was that was kind of holding you back from doing more?
Time.
Okay.
You're caught in this bit of a rat race where you're working so hard to build wealth, but then you're unable to create the space to actually think about your wealth building strategy, how to manage, how to grow. But then honestly, I think the other thing is maybe very similar. It's only just struck me now that we've been speaking, very similar to what we said earlier around, actually, I don't think I had that many examples of people who had managed and grown wealth.
Okay.
I never really spoke to my father about it. My mom wasn't wealthy.
And it's not a conversation that women in particular are having.
No, you're right, actually. And I don't feel like we talk about it even with my girlfriends, for example, as much as we should. I think it's just something that we just think automatically happens. And like I said, I don't see myself as wealthy, but I definitely have aspirations to have even more financial security and by particular points in my life as well.
Yep.
So the amount of time that I'd say I've dedicated at work towards helping create wealth for the organization, etc. I haven't even done close to a fraction, right?
But you're not
for myself.
alone. You're not alone. So many women are in that situation. Like even I was, I was literally making other people wealthier for a living. And at the time when I first started, my money was in cash. And it wasn't until I got to a point, and I remember saying to Tony, to my husband, I'm like, this is insane. Like, why is our money and my money in cash? And every day I'm investing it for other people and I'm not doing anything for myself. And that was my turning point. I was like, no, this is ridiculous. Also because investing is how you build wealth.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you need the salary, you need the income. And that's the kind of bit you need to start with. But then you use that through investing to build wealth. Whereas a lot of people, I think, particularly, back in the day, it's like, get a job, work hard, earn a lot, and that will make me wealthy. That's not how you build wealth. And
again, I think it's one of those things that are sort of, if you use the term gatekeeping, within the wealthy elites. Because even the concept of debt, for example, for a long time, I was very anti any sort of debts. Like I worked my way through university. I didn't want to take any school student loans. And, even up until the point of us buying our first property, I was like, oh my gosh, like me take, no. And I think there is a mindset play there. Because for a long time, having moved here to the UK and having to work as a bartender, then, seeing my account go from like pennies to pounds to hundreds, right? And then now having this, there is a certain level of security around, oh my gosh, I've never had this before and I now have this. To then, in some people's minds, gamble that is quite unsettling.
But I think the key there is what you said, gamble. And I know a lot of people feel investing is like that, but it really does not have to be.
Yeah.
And for me, I think a lot of it comes down to a lack of education and experience. And I think when you do actually understand investing, and it's really not complicated, I think the industry uses a lot of jargon and makes it more complicated than it has to be.
Completely
because
agree.
They don't want everyone to get it.
Yeah.
Because they don't want everyone to be wealthy.
Yeah.
But if you can actually grasp it, and I promise you, we are going to have that financial coaching session. And I promise you, when you get it, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you get it, it is so transformational also to your mindset as well. And then when you start putting money to work in a way that you feel comfortable with, and then you start to see the returns, you're just like, oh my gosh, why was I not doing this before?
Completely agree. I mean, I've started to invest in the stock market, so S&P 500, nothing particularly complex.
Curiosity, why S&P 500? Every time I ask people what they're invested in, 9 out of 10 people tell me the S&P 500. I'm like, I get it, right? But why does everyone say that? Why?
No, because it's like what the prevailing literature references, right? So everyone reads it, it's like, okay, we have to.
Uses S&P 500 as an example.
As this safe haven of, but it doesn't have to be that, absolutely. But you're absolutely right. I think it's that practice piece as well. You dabble and then you actually start to realize, you start to get more and more familiar with the terminology and all these things that makes it seem like it's this super sophisticated and complex world.
Yeah.
But actually, you can get it. Like if you've gotten this far and you can dedicate the time, it's absolutely, you can understand it, you can work through it. And it's actually exciting, right? It's really empowering. So completely with you. I want to do even more, but the little that I've been doing has just been so liberating.
Yeah.
And it's teaching me as well a lot about financial discipline in a new way, right? It's about thinking about how I diversify my portfolio, thinking about trade-offs and how I optimize for my risk appetite versus returns, what that final number is, etc. It's making me a better investment professional.
No, it's funny because I'm actually writing a book at the moment and it's all about women and investing. And part of my aim of that book is to simplify it all to a point that anyone can read it and get it. And I'll be honest, I'm on a chapter right now where I'm trying to explain all the different types of funds there are out there. Not, I don't mean like the names of fund, but the different types of funds, like ETF, mutual fund, there are open-ended fund, close-ended funds. There are, asset-based funds, mixed funds, fund of funds. And I remember like the last couple of days going through this, I'm like, oh my gosh, like why have they made this so complicated? And then for me, I'm like, right, I'm going to sit here until I can explain this simply so that other people will be able to get it. It can be done, but even I was like, bloody hell, like they really do not need to have this many names for
gatekeeping.
it. Yeah,
it's gatekeeping
absolutely.
the expertise, the facade of complexity,
Making
and
it seem more complex than it
keeps
is.
more people out of it.
Yeah. I really think about, and we met for lunch last week, and I actually said this to you. You have had a phenomenal corporate career. You have worked at some of the biggest names in big jobs. You've been earning very, very well. You've managed to, amass wealth that you want to, invest and build more wealth. Why would you leave all of that to start a startup? And I say that as somebody who has had the corporate career, has been through the startup. I have been through all the ups, the downs, etc. I'm currently dealing with my trauma. And you are at the beginning. Like, please explain.
No. I ask myself the same question quite a few times every day, most days. Why? I want to be the architect of my future.
Okay.
I have learned so much from my corporate career to date. I have been really blessed. I've had the opportunity to be mentored and sponsored by many incredible people. But it hasn't always been easy.
Okay.
I think sometimes there is this allure of the corporate journey, right? You started off as an analyst, associate, junior partner, C-level exec, etc. But it wasn't always linear. It wasn't always straightforward. And, often I don't think we speak enough about the ups and downs and some of the very unpleasant parts of that journey.
Okay.
The sacrifices that I've had to make, the toll it took on my physical and mental health, the risks to my relationships with my children, my mom, my husband, etc. As an example, politics at C-level, it's bad.
Okay.
When you're the only as well, it's incredibly hard.
Okay.
And you know what? It got to a point where, yes, like you say, I was doing well financially. I had finally the C-level role that I always wanted. I was, in a role where the scale of the remit was incredible, millions of customers, et cetera, et cetera. But then actually behind the scenes, it was a constant challenging trade-off. And it got to a point where I started to do, because I'm quite analytical, started to do the analysis of the amount of investment I'm making in terms of my talent and my time and my efforts and the return that I was going to see.
Like financial return.
Financial returns and other types of returns in terms of fulfillment, for example.
Okay.
If I was to apply that into my own venture, albeit with higher risks, maybe longer runways and so on, but do I think I would actually get even more return on me mentally, financially, etc.? And the answer to that question was, I think I would.
Okay.
It was going to be a bigger leap of faith, but I was at a point where thankfully I had enough financial security to take that leap.
Yeah, you had that safety net.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So would I have been able to make that decision? Actually, I did build businesses many, many years ago where I had to face the cruel reality of, okay, do I take a massive pay cut and start this thing? Or do I go back to the security of my corporate job? And in two situations, I chose to go back. But now I was able to actually, oh gosh, yes, I can actually give this a proper go. But still, not to the point where I can do it all on my own. So I've invested significantly, but actually I'm also needing to fundraise, etc. So all to say, the why for me has been about what I want my legacy to be.
Okay.
And what I see as my, in many ways, final professional chapter.
Okay.
And I really want to make it count. And it's applying some of the principles that I'm learning around investing. Again, I'm definitely a novice relative to you, but I think sometimes if you really want bigger payoffs, you have to take bigger risks.
Absolutely. Risk and return are basically two different sides of the same coin. And I always say this to people, if you want bigger payoffs, you have to take bigger risk. But not all risk is equal. And I always say you've got to take calculated risks.
Yes.
So you've got to assess the situation. How can you de-risk it? How can you remove some of the risk? And then think about, okay, what is the probability of that risk or this risk happening? If they're fairly low or it's something that you can cope with, then, taking on that risky thing isn't necessarily bad. But tell us, what are you doing? What is the idea?
I am building a platform to help people live healthier for longer.
Okay.
And I'm doing it for the people who need it the most because they have greater demand for innovative solutions to help them detect risks, but also to be able to finance access to healthcare. And often they're the most underserved. Most of the solutions, particularly digital solutions today, often focus on the global north. So I'm focusing on the global south, the global majority. Okay. So we're talking Africans, South Asians at home, but also in the diaspora, so in the UK, US. So we're building a product which is AI powered and it helps predict risks of common chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension, and then provides culturally intelligent coaching. So recognizes that people like us eat jollof rice, biryani, etc., and can actually provide relevant coaching that suits our physiological and cultural profiles. But it's not just the engine, if you will, of that sort of health prediction and management. It's also the financial piece as well, because often people see healthcare as a healthcare challenge only. But it's also a financial challenge. Having worked in healthcare insurance, I realized that access to healthcare, financing healthcare is such a big piece of the problem. So we're looking at actually how we help people finance access to healthcare, whether it's through diaspora remittance flows, or also through creating the data that makes the uninsurable insurable. So it's early stage, but it's a big ambition. If we get it right, we solve for the millions of preventable deaths that we see around the world every year. And that's what keeps me going. That's what, to answer your previous question, makes me wake up every morning and think, oh my gosh, I could be back in my corporate role with my assistants and my massive
and
teams
nice
and
salary.
budgets. And I'm like, yes, but no, it's a very, very big ambition that we're trying to solve for.
Okay. And last question for you. If there are women out there who are watching this and they're employees, they're doing really well, but they've never really thought strategically about building their wealth, alongside when they're working, what would you want to say?
Start now.
In terms of investing?
It's never too early. Yes. Okay. It's never too early to invest in building your wealth, even through the corporate angle. It's absolutely possible to do it. It takes a lot of grit, a lot of hard work, creating the time and space that we often don't have, but is so essential to creating that strategy. And you're probably well equipped to do that, right? You probably have gotten to where you are today because of all of those fantastic qualities. So I'd say actually the one thing that I would encourage everyone to really focus on doing as well is getting a sponsor. Not a mentor, not someone to give you advice, but a real sponsor. Ages ago, when I thought I had sponsors and I wasn't progressing as quickly as I thought I should have been, given how hard I was working, was, a mentor will tell you how to get there. They'll give you the blueprint, if you will. A sponsor will hold your hand and walk with you for
Mhm.
some of the way, maybe not all of it, but they'll at least make sure that they connect you to someone else who can help you with the next. And then open the door, tell you how to get through there, etc. So it's a very active role. And, you know, they are the ones in the calibration room when we talk about increasing your compensation. It's not only just you, right? It's equipping people to go into that room and pound their fists on the table. Because again, often to be able to get more in your budget, someone else has to lose a little bit. So it's a bit of a competition, right? So
you need
those
that
are the sort of
person in your
sponsors who are going to
corner.
go in and say, no, she needs to get this and that. And no, Jack.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, having been in those rooms, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's not just the filling forms, it's actually having these debates.
You need those people fighting for you behind the scenes.
Sponsors.
And
We
you've got
don't
to
have
work
as
on
many
that.
as we should.
Yeah. No, I think that's such a powerful thing that you said, because I think a lot of people just don't realize how impactful certain people can be in your life. And as we said earlier, when you look at successful people, we sometimes don't even see who's behind them, but there will be people there because you cannot do it alone.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before I let you go, what I do at the end of this is I'm going to ask you 5 very quick fire questions.
Ooh. You didn't send this in the prep notes.
Of course not.
Oh my gosh, okay. I should have watched this.
Of course not.
Oh gosh, okay.
Because I want to know what is the first thing that comes into your head. Okay. Visibility or impact?
Impact.
Salary or equity?
Equity.
Security or freedom?
Freedom.
Corporate ladder or your own table?
Oh, my own table.
Build wealth first or build the business first?
Build wealth first.
Okay.
I wasn't expecting the answers I gave. I'm so surprised myself.
Yeah, no, there's no prepping for that. I think it's just really interesting to see what comes out first, because that's usually the truest thing to you. But thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much, Aisha, for having me. It has been an absolute honor.